spoke to Philip about this. He said, let's just put some seeds in the room and see what the guys come up with. So I've taken it a little bit back to digital innovation and payments, because I think at the end of the day, payments is really around the channel and the mechanism that you embed the technology in. So payments is effectively what we term the banks a four-party or a three-party model. So there's always an acquirer or an interchange or a bank serve or someone like that involved, and there's an issuer. And then put it in layman's terms, the issuer is the bank or the entity that provides you with the mechanism that actually makes the payment, so the consumer side. And the acquirer is the person or the retailer or the merchant that accepts the payment. So a POS device is an acquiring device and a card is an issuing device. Now, the way the world's moving, and I'll go a little bit into that, is obviously that plastic card, or that mechanism, is no longer the only way to make payments and make purchases. So as I said, I'm going to go a little bit higher up, and I'm going to talk about the world of payments and how things have changed, and the types of things that you guys could be thinking about, and hopefully other students will think about when they think about building these types of solutions, or just pitching the ideas. And that's important, because I think my previous exposure to this competition is that we're not expecting people to go and build solutions for the pitch, but we want to see really good ideas and really well thought out processes of what they could build. And then hopefully if they do win, when Paul shares the money with them, they'll have the cash to actually build it. So I'm going to cover a few concepts there around digital strategy, but really focusing on the payments piece. And just a little bit of a storyline is, if you think about the payments world and around digital strategy in banking or in commerce, some things have changed dramatically. So if you cast your minds back to a time where you had to go to a library to go and consume information, you had to check a book out, and if you didn't bring it back, you got a fine, £2 or £2.50. That was the only way to actually go and find information, go and read a book. The same applied when you were trying to find music. So you had to actually go to an LP store or a CD store or a tape store, heaven forbid, and actually go and, I'm probably talking to the wrong audience here.
No,
you guys have done this. Anyone else, you guys know what that is? So the odd thing is that nowadays LPs are actually back in fashion. So people are kind of DJs and that sort of thing are buying, vinyl. I've got vinyl floors in my house, but that's as close as it gets. So that was a big thing. The next thing was that people took their money to a bank and they actually went and sat in front of a bank manager to get a loan, or they did something that said, I want to make deposits, so I want to take a withdrawal. And the last one just was games. I've used this slide before, and I told this story, and the audience thought it was hilarious because half of them were like your age. And I said the way I used to do it was I had like a Sega Mega Drive, or this might sound like foreign language, or like a Nintendo game deck, and you'd go to like the market on a Friday afternoon and you'd buy this little plastic cartridge, and that cartridge plugged into the machine vertically, and then that was like American Ninja 3 or something. And when you finished the levels, the game was over. And so based on that cartridge, it was effectively worthless unless you wanted to start again and see if you could do it differently. So you had two options: you either threw it away or you swapped it with your friend. Gaming back then it had an end. And obviously you can see where I'm going with this. The world has changed, and I think a little bit, and I'll obviously come back to payments now, but nowadays, if you think about where we were in the past, things are very different. People used to communicate, they used to have stuff to talk about. Nowadays, and I don't know if you guys do it, but when we're at the bank, at the head office up in Santon, if we have nothing to say to each other in the lift, everyone's hands go to their pockets and pull out their phones, because that's what we do. We want to check Twitter, we want to update our Facebook status, we want to see what's happening on LinkedIn. Maybe there's a job offer waiting. Before, people didn't have that, so there was a different way of communicating. Nowadays, the power sits in your pocket, because you can make purchases, play games, listen to music, etc., etc. And talk to your friends who are in the room next door, because it's too far to walk. A little bit about this, and this is important because the point of this challenge is to say, how do you guys stretch your minds around what you could potentially do in this space? Mobile and payments is about scale. So it's about saying, how do I identify the next opportunity that could potentially be huge? Because everyone has a phone, and in this stat it says there's more than 100% penetration of mobile phones in South Africa. And that's not just smartphones. So in Africa we've got this kind of curve that's going to cross at some point that says feature phones will get replaced by smartphones. But we don't know it depends on who you listen to, McKinsey or anyone that comes out with a stat that says by 2016 everyone will have a smartphone. We're not there yet, but we're getting there quickly. People are consuming more data on their phones now than they're consuming on desktops. And if you think a little while back, people weren't consuming information on desktops either. So stuff is rapidly changing, and the hockey stick curve is showing us massive amounts of change in this data and this content consumption space. People are also buying more real-world goods through digital channels than they used to. So when, I have to keep checking myself, as students, you've probably always had the ability to go and buy products through e-commerce. When it first came out in the 90s, early 2000s, the only thing you could buy through a cell phone was a ringtone, or like an emoji. I don't think emoji was even a term back then, but you could buy something that you could embed in your SMS that gave someone the sense that there was emotion behind the message. Now you can buy anything, effectively even a house. I mean, we've got a full online form that allows you to purchase a property online. So the world is changing, and I think smartphones and the cost of data coming down are changing how that works, and that's important to think about, because what you guys might come up with as ideas has no limits. So there really is nothing holding you back. A little joke, and obviously it's a joke at ourselves, because if you're a bank nowadays and you haven't got an app that can't, at least check your balance, you're not in the market. You've got to take it further. So everyone's competing for that next piece of space. So we were the first bank that you could buy shares or trade shares through your mobile phone. Some of the other guys are doing other things, but basically mobile banking allows you to do what you used to have to go into the bank to do, but wherever you are, in the lift talking to your friends, or sitting on a plane, or whatever it might be. I mean, I flew down yesterday and obviously Mango's got Wi-Fi on the plane, so I could effectively do my banking or do my status update there as well, 30,000 feet. The next thing, and also important for you guys to think about, is that the landscape has changed around digital. It's no longer I create the code and no one else has access to it. That top left-hand corner talks about open APIs, and I'm assuming there's a relatively tech-savvy audience. The ability nowadays to take a line of code or a service and replicate it into something that can be produced in complete open source methodology is there. So this picture talks about the fact that we delivered, as Nedbank, the first mobile point-of-sale device in Africa that was EMV level 3 certified, so chip and pin. But that was just the start. What we've done now is we've taken the mobile app and started actually putting the code out there for people to build their own payments apps using that API. And that's something that if you guys want to talk about, we can do through this challenge as well. I often talk to guys about mobile payments, specifically the hardware side of it, and say, why can't we change people's business models? Companies like KFC don't do deliveries in South Africa, but why not? They don't do it because they don't have the technology to go and do a delivery and take a payment, or it doesn't make sense because the scale and the volume and the cost of the device doesn't make sense. But when you move on to the mobile channel, the cost drops dramatically. All that person needs to do is have a phone and hopefully have a device that talks to it, or take the payment through the phone directly. Big data is massive. I don't want to make this challenge too big, but there's a huge amount of information that sits off the back of the payment. So if I'm the retailer and I know enough information about the client that's paying, where they're paying, what they're buying, how often they buy it, what times of the day they do it, which stores they go to within a holding company like a Busby Group or whatever, I can start doing push campaigns and I can start selling other propositions off the back of that. And then social media. It's almost impossible to imagine e-commerce in the world of payments without the fact that you want to share what you've done, that you want to target your customers. So it's no longer social media, it's now social business. And I've got slides on all of this data, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about it now so that I don't have to get stuck on the data. So really, what are the big payments trends out there? I've put just a couple on here. I don't know if any of you have played around with the beacon technology. So when we talk about beacons, we're really talking about the crossroad between the merchant, so the retail store, and the consumer. And the way beacons work, so these little ones here are called SD-mode beacons. We were actually the first ones in South Africa to bring them into the country. What we're playing around with now is around saying, if I have a coffee shop in a retail location where there might be 5 or 6 other coffee shops, and I give that coffee shop these beacons, they typically have between a 50 and 100 meter range. So if someone walks past and they've got an app loaded on their phone, those beacons will pick them up, a bit like near frequency communication, NFC, and they can actually push a message to that person walking past. So the real world scenario is, if I have a desire to go and buy coffee, and I'm heading towards coffee shop 1, coffee shop 2 has information about me, and I enter that 100 meter zone, which is quite big. Coffee shop 2 can say, hey Chris, we see here, come in for a coffee and we'll give you 25% off. I'm probably going to change my direction and go to coffee shop number 2. A, because they've got something in my pocket, being the phone and the app on the phone that allows me to do it. And B, because they're actually able to talk to me without me even being in their store. Now the beauty of this technology is if you take a really large store like an Incredible Connection or a Hershey's or one of those big retailers, they can put beacons in different parts of their stores and actually start realizing that you're shopping in the TV section, or that you're shopping in the fridge section, or that you're shopping in the music section. And they can start customizing the offering that they have for you because of where they see you shopping. And heaven forbid you come back a second time and you shop in the same section, now they really know that they've got you. Because they know what their margins look like and they can start pushing deals to you based on what might be required. So beacons are big, and beacons run off technology called BLE, Bluetooth Low Frequency. So BLE is almost...
Sorry, isn't it low energy?
Yeah, well, I compare it to near frequency communication. So
Okay.
So I was going to say it's slightly different to NFC. And NFC, you have to actually be really close to the device to make the payment happen. Bluetooth, you can load a digital wallet up on your phone and actually pay from within that 100-meter range. So you can have a mobile wallet, which then becomes the interface. So big trends out there: NFC, BLE, Wi-Fi as a mechanism for connectivity, contactless DDA. So the world is moving towards saying, I want to know more about the customer and I want to know more about what I can do with that customer. I'm a huge fan of BLE because I think it gives the merchant power that the merchant never used to have. And I think if you guys start playing around with something like this is something that's really, really not being exposed in South Africa a lot. I would love to personally see someone come and say, you know what, this started as an idea, we had a pitch, but through that process we've actually gone and spoken to, I don't know, the coffee shop in the Nielsen or something. We're actually starting to target customers because that's really cool. And that, like I said, is the crossroad of how do I use social media, how do I use the location of the customer, how do I use deals, and how do I start understanding the customer better. Yeah, I'm starting to talk about real value. A little bit more around this. So the next piece that I want to talk about is, obviously payments is a huge part of it, but it's e-commerce or m-commerce. And this slide talks about the fact that people are buying from a mobile phone, never mind from a desktop or a laptop, has tripled since 2011. And that's probably out of date, but it's probably quadrupled or quintupled. What people are also doing here is that they're likely to go and actually go to a store and, as I said, look for a pair of shoes. So if I'm going to find a pair of running shoes, I'm going to go to Total Sports. But then when I see the pair of shoes at Total Sports for $1,399, and I go on my phone and I check it, and Sportsman's Warehouse is selling it for $1,299, I'm going to walk straight out of Total Sports and go to Sportsman's Warehouse. So I can actually start checking the value of a retail product while I'm there in another store on my phone. People are doing that a lot because if your company's not online, you haven't got the ability to actually expose your brand to people where they are when they want to look at it. You're missing out on opportunities. So a totally different stream is around how do we get companies or small businesses online so that they can start exposing their products to their clients. Major players that are turning the retail world upside down. So this one, I'm sure most of you have heard about, coming out of Asia. Huge player. I mean, people use very sort of flowery language around saying they make eBay and Amazon look like Mickey Mouse. Obviously, everything coming out of Asia makes, from a scale point of view, everything else look like Mickey Mouse because the volumes are so great in terms of the client base. But these guys are also changing the way they do e-commerce. They're changing the model. They're changing the way that logistics happens and delivery of product, etc., etc. So this world is, people always say to me, e-commerce is coming, and I'm like, it's kind of been here for a while. So I'm really pushing our bank certainly to be a big player in this space. Amazon, everyone knows about. iTunes. So if you think about my initial position around, you had to go to a library to consume information about a book, or you had to go and find an LP. No one can even wrap their head around that because I can download music right now. Things like Shazam, I can listen to the song on the radio and in one click I can buy the song that I've just heard so that I can hear it 100 times. And it's also not just overseas. I mean, Zando and Takealot they went here 2.5, 3 years ago in South Africa. They're now, I think, the 2 highest grossing e-commerce retailers in South Africa. It's fantastic because my brother-in-law works there, so he's doing really well. And then obviously Twitter and Facebook. Payments companies aren't just the retailers, they're also the social media companies, and these guys are starting to play in payments as well. Everyone hears about Facebook payments and around payments on Twitter, the really innovative companies, the ones that these guys are buying, are the ones that are coming up with technologies that are getting embedded in these platforms. Because people know that their customers are here. So it's really around saying, what can I create that I can use in stuff that people are already at, as opposed to saying, let me create something that I've got to still get customers to come to. And that's where things like plugins and apps make so much sense. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about this, but when you talk about encryption, I mean, encryption is at the heart of cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, geez, I've done a huge amount of study on this stuff, and I still think if someone was to put me on the spot, I'd miss half the detail behind explaining it properly. But cryptocurrency is, again, another one that's coming. I mean, governments are shutting this stuff down, but they can't shut it down fast enough, because the minute they say it's not allowed, someone else comes up with a different format of what cryptocurrency could be. So merchants are starting to accept Bitcoin. I mean, you can go to a coffee store and you can pay in Bitcoin. Bitcoin ATMs are getting rolled out. Again, this is something that people aren't really playing with in South Africa. It might be a little bit too hardcore for a few month challenge, but I think if you break this down to its simplest level, it's just e-commerce at another level. And it's saying, why must I talk about rands and dollars and cents as the currency of choice that gets interchanged? If JD wants to pay me, why can't he pay me in Bitcoin? And what that does is it creates this market of supply and demand that really undercuts traditional currency today. That's why the governments are worried about it. But again, it's just around saying, what can actually happen in that space that allows people to start using this stuff. Maybe you build an API that embeds a Bitcoin acceptance mechanism into something today that really works. Maybe you can start buying clothing on Zando using Bitcoin. Maybe they want to see that. Effective use of social media. I touched on this just now. Social media has really moved, certainly in the corporate space, from social media to social business. And social business starts talking about how to use social platforms to actually do corporate stuff. Finding and recruiting people. Doing marketing of products. We don't take any product to market now out of the bank that doesn't go out on social media. In fact, 9 times out of 10 nowadays, we don't even do above the line marketing anymore. We promote our products on social, we engage with customers on social, and we find out what they want to do. We actually change our products based on feedback we get on social. One of the examples I always use is, we'll get a complaint from a person who's standing in a queue at a branch. Our social media team will pick it up first, phone the branch manager, and that person will go and find them while they're in the queue. So it's like, the person will say, how did you know that happened? They said, well, you posted a tweet at FuzzyBear371, and the customers are blown away because they're like, this is amazing. So social media, payments and digital cannot be separated. And social is important because you have access to your entire consumer base of people out there. So if you use it properly, you can talk to them. If you communicate with them in the right way, they'll understand what your product's all about. If you start thinking about knowing where their locations are and the types of products they're buying, you can start promoting messages through those channels to where they are. And I can go on and on about that. Creating unique user experiences. So I created one for you guys today because it's obviously a student community, and I thought, geez, if this thing had existed when I was at Varsity, I would have loved life. So here's an app called HouseTab, and HouseTab allows me as a patron at a bar or restaurant to actually be sitting at a corner table and actually order beers or drinks or whatever from my phone. So what this does is it says, I no longer have to go up to the bar and fight for everyone else to get to the front. I can just order my drinks based on a preloaded list, and then those drinks will get delivered to me. Now that's amazing because that changes the way the structure of the bar works. Now there's no longer that jostling and that elbowing to actually get in there. It says that someone's understood the need of the student. We'll use that as the example. And they've created something that actually allows that to work. The next thing that follows on from that, the logical migration, is that you probably need to have a breathalyzer to then at the end of the night figure out if you can drive or not. So someone says, well, here's an app that allows me to drink. Here's one that tells me if I've drank too much. And then it says you tanked, so now you know maybe I shouldn't get into traffic. And then if you've done too much of that, then what happens is you actually phone Uber. And Uber says, well, I can see where you are, I'll be there in 10 minutes. So what happens now from this whole cycle is I've bought lots of drinks, I've realized I'm tanked, and I'm still getting home. As opposed to, certainly when I was here at Stellenbosch, you had too many drinks and then you try to find Helderberg, and you ended up in Somerset West. So, there were challenges that we had that are now being solved through technology. The important part about this is every single one of these has payments embedded in it. And that's a real world scenario that someone could come up with. If someone came and pitched any one of these things to me at the pitching den, I would say that's amazing. I might have seen some of it before, but it's the type of thing you guys need to think about. So everything today has some type of payments capability built in. I haven't put slides on it here, but something I wanted to do for you guys was to talk a little bit about gamification. I was in Tokyo about 2 years ago, and I went and saw a company called Gree, not the air conditioning company. The Gree in Tokyo is a company that builds games. So really something I'd like you guys to think about is the gaming opportunity in Japan. Now you guys know probably a little bit about Japan, Hello Kitty and all that stuff. The gaming opportunity is so large that this company went from 0 to $2 billion revenue turnover in less than 2 years. Their biggest cost is that they have an entire floor of animators. So you walk through this floor and there are these amazing people like drawing cartoons and stuff like that. Those cartoons all get turned into games. The most amazing thing though is that that $2 billion revenue came from the fact that every single time they launch a game it's free. But within that game, if you want to get to the next level and beat the big boss, buy the next weapon, buy the next whatever you buy, the clothing for the cat or the fairy or whatever it is that the game's about, you pay for it. So they knew that there was a space in their market for people to want to pay for stuff. And people were downloading their games, getting frustrated that it was taking so long, and paying. And they paid, I mean, I'd love to know what their revenue is now, that was 2 years ago. But I can guarantee you it's probably multiplied. So gamification is huge, and I think in South Africa there's the same sort of opportunity, and I think we've probably not explored that enough. Just a quick one, another one that obviously worries the banks a lot is P2P. So everyone knows about Kickstarter and Lending Club and all those different platforms. Thunder Fund, I think, is you guys might have come across down here in the Western Cape. Again, using payments in a slightly different way, but allowing money to be transferred between entities, B2B or B2C. That's a lot. That's a large number. That's how much money in dollars has been pledged to projects just through Kickstarter. And I'm not talking about any other platforms, because when you put all this together, it's a whole economy. In fact, I met a guy, I was at Harvard last year, and I met a guy called John Donovan who was involved in Lending Club as one of the co-founders. And he told me a story about, because I wrote my master's thesis on peer-to-peer, he told me a story about the fact that he actually had to go to the government or the parliament of the US, I don't know what they call it. Congress. To go and explain that P2P wasn't going to be something that was going to disrupt the way that the American economy worked. It's going to stand in front of them and explain the concepts because they were so worried about it, and that was a number of years back. But again, digital payments, money transfer, this is the kind of stuff that is going to change the way that we operate. And we will get to a point where we can't imagine, like I did in my very first slide, how stuff used to work, because this stuff will be so much part of what we do today or tomorrow. And then I didn't know how Philip said I mustn't get very technical, but I think what I'd rather say is, if anyone at any of the universities is actively looking to get into building something that works, we can obviously make availability to any of the resources that we have if people want to find out more. This looks very complex, but it's a flow that says how would building an e-commerce application actually work around things like embedding your payments capability to an integrator, doing a 3D secure transaction, getting a one-time message back, doing the encryption, etc., etc. So authorizing the payment for the consumer through the mobile or the desktop platform, and actually allowing that payment to again get settled into the merchant account. So I've touched on a huge amount of stuff, but I think what I'd like to then leave it with is to say that for me the message would be, there are one of any million things that you guys could think about in this space. We've spoken about so many of the different trends: NFC, BLE, contactless, e-commerce, m-commerce, different types of genres of types of things you could build. The reality is that payments is embedded in everything. If we say mobile is in everything we do, the next thing that follows is payments, or money transfer, or purchases. And every single opportunity here, there's a consumer, and there's a business, or a retailer, or a merchant. And what you guys have got to think about is, how do I create something that allows consumers to buy something from someone else, or as in P2P, for consumers to give money to other people. And that could be local, cross-border, whatever it might be. So I think this is a huge challenge. I think if we were to break it down into something just like e-commerce and buying stuff off a phone, that would be big on its own. But think about what this could be. Think about concepts that haven't been covered. Don't go and create another Uber or another Take-A-Lot. But think about the types of worlds that people haven't got solutions for and what I've spoken about. And let's see what we can do in that space. Great. Thank you.
I've just got a question on payments.
Yeah.
How would you address or how would one address the challenge of getting money onto a platform where, for instance, you're trying to target a market where people don't have debit cards or credit cards or easy access to a bank?
So it's another whole genre. So we have big focus on that in our unbanked segment. So we've probably got 9 million people in the country of our population that are considered bankable, but that have no access to financial facilities, people living in rural areas, remote areas. I think there are a number of ways you can do it. Mobile is certainly the answer. So why would I need to have a piece of plastic if I can make the payment directly through my phone? The problem there is the funding of the account. So I think the way that you get the money into the account is through something like a POS device or some mechanism that actually allows you to make a deposit or to accept cash over the counter. Let's be honest, in the world of payments, cash is still king. So what we're not doing here is we're not saying we're going to go and overnight take away cash or take away any other mechanism that has value. If someone has cash and they want to get onto a phone or something like that, that they can then go and make an e-payment or something like that, I think the easiest way to do it is to take hardware or something out to where they are. Because you can't go and install an ATM, you can't go and put a branch in a location that people just aren't going to be at. If I look at real world scenarios today, for me that's at the till or at a spaza shop point of sale, or what we've got is we've got massive amounts of facilities that people can go and buy prepaid airtime or can go and buy prepaid electricity. If you start looking at those platforms and taking them further around funding of accounts, around accessing or making funding of mobile wallets, that's the way to get it done. A really nice mechanism which doesn't really involve the plastic but might have a dual benefit is if you go and actually buy a debit card or an anonymous card over the counter, like eToll was trying to get that done, buy it for 50 Rand and then automatically take a code or a reference number that's on that piece of plastic and you put it to your phone, send it to you through a USSD string, and that'll fund a mobile wallet or an account. And then you don't necessarily have to use the plastic to make the payment, but you've got something physical that's allowed you to fund the mobile digital account. There's lots of ways to do it, but I don't think the challenge in South Africa is not so much that you can't do it, it's around the regulation. So you've still got to do FICA and phase and all that stuff on clients when they open up accounts. That's where the big difference lies between the telcos and the banks, because the regulators have different requirements for them. It's a bit more complex.
That's good. You touched on the regulations. In terms of the challenge, if you end up winning or whatever, will Nedbank be able to help us with the regulations, or will they stand behind us while we do it?
I think from a banking point of view, what I'd be looking for is really cool ideas. I think from a regulatory point of view, we can make anything in payments happen. That's the beauty of the infrastructure and the facilities we have available to us. A little bit like the data security and the encryption and the authorizations. If you need more information, I'll make sure that we get people down here that can help you do that. We also have the guys up the road, Intersect, who are our security partners when it comes to mobile and internet banking. And Skulk and the guys have got, I think they're probably world leading in this space at the moment. So yeah, we'll try and give you as much support as possible once you win. Cool.
I just want to know, what is the perception of the sort of mobile point of sale devices? Do people find them secure? If I would button my phone and say, pay me money, are people willing to do that? Or do you have to convince them?
As a salesperson or
as a salesperson, if you...
Yeah, I think as in all innovations, there's always a bit of a slow take-up because it's something new. Like our pocket POS device, the biggest problem was not so much selling it to customers, it was trying to convince our salespeople that they knew what they were talking about when they tried to sell it. So you give a pocket POS to a salesperson that's only ever sold current accounts and home loans and investments. And now you're telling them that there's a mobile interface on a phone that talks via Bluetooth to a secure device that encrypts the information in the background and sends it back to the bank. The guys were like lost at mobile phone. So I think people are getting more and more used to using mobile technology now to make payments. I think we're going to have a few glitches in the journey, and that's going to be both on the consumer side and the merchant side. But I don't think it's going to stop people from using it. I think people are learning to trust new technology and new innovation now. It's changing the way they interact.
Do you have any feedback from the market in terms of?
I don't think it's working, so I mean,
Okay. Any feedback on what type of merchant is picking up the pocket POS how quickly?
what type of merchant?
Yeah, is it a restaurant? Is it?
Yeah, so what we do is we actually map them into different industry verticals. So the logical one is always the door-to-door guy that doesn't get paid when he comes and does a service like a plumber or a florist or an electrician or whatever, because those guys come, they typically do large jobs, like a TV installer. And then they typically end up not getting paid for 90 days. So those are logical ones for us. The best scenario that I can give you, like I showed you Hollard up on one of those screens, is we designed that product for those guys, for the one-to-one relationship, the small business guy. But where the real opportunity actually lies is in the larger companies, the corporates. So Hollard, for example, has, I think, the second largest mobile sales force of any company in South Africa. Guys that go out and actually sell insurance policies and do collections. The problem is what they do is they go out and actually get a form filled out, and that form then gets completed out in the field. It gets brought back to the office. The person captures it onto their workflow system, and then within 30 days, a call center agent phones that potential customer and says, "Hey, you filled out a form. Would you like to take up the policy?" And by that stage, the person's cooled off. So what Pocket POS does for them, and we're actually busy piloting exactly that with them. We took the API and we actually built an app for Hollard. Looks like Hollard, plays like Hollard, we can sell products like through an e-retailer type interface, was that they can go out to the field, they can fund the account through the Pocket POS, which is where you have a plastic and you can actually pay it into the device, to instantly activate that policy without having to come back to the office and capture any information, because the information that gets captured through the mobile interface talks to the Pocket POS, creates the account on the spot.
Sure. So as I'm purchasing insurance on the spot with my credit card. Oh, that's different.
No, well, you're funding so what happens is, so any financial interface, you have to do one of two things. You have to get an initial funding of the account, so you've got to put money into the account to activate it, and then you've got to either set up a debit order or some kind of a payment mechanism to pay for that thing. And there's a new thing coming out next year called authenticated debit orders, where companies actually have to make sure that the debit order has been authenticated at the point where it's been created. Now again, mobile point of sale would help with that, because I can authenticate through the card and the information on the card that you were the person at that point of sale. So to answer your original question, we thought it was the one-to-one small business, and we're starting to realize that it's actually larger corporates who've got mobile sales forces selling product out in the field.
Okay. Cool.
So instead of selling one Pocket POS here and two there, we can sell 300 or 400 at a time.